In today's episode of Let's Talk, Tim Walter, house healer and alternative life coach, talks about how the life-changing event that he experienced made him reevaluate the way he looked at the world that we live in. So where has this led you now? Where has this taken you?
Yeah, I mean, going back to the particular life change moment of moving into the house and discovering this spirit entity, right? That opened a door into an area of life that I'd never experienced before, hadn't really paid much attention to. And I mean, we lived in that house for 15 years, and Jane was a big part of those 15 years. The children, we've got two boys, they grew up with the experience of having a ghost in the house. I don't usually refer to her as a ghost because she actually had more authority and significance than just a wandering spirit. So, but the point being is that opening this door and entering this aspect of living enabled me to completely reframe the way that I saw my life. So my priorities changed. I still have obviously wanted to be able to provide a certain amount of income, but the work that I wanted to do, the clients, if you like, that I was wanting to work with, changed. I had far more respect for everybody around me. I had far more gratitude in my life. It took a long while for these things to kind of to actually come into my life and to take hold and to change me in a way, because it was a slow. I was a really stubborn, quite unpleasant person. Well, how difficult is that to believe? I was very selfish as a person. And hadn't realised how selfish I was. So basically, it was a life-changing moment, but it was a very slow change. So now, what I'm doing now, and really from the moment that I met my mentor, Hamish Miller, who was a dowser and a metal worker and very much into earth energy and looking after the planet and helping people sort of come to terms with and understand their subjective realities, so their spiritual side. Since that point, that's really what I've graduated more and more towards, because I am very aware of how the spiritual awakening, if you like, that I had changed my life so much for the better. If that worked for me, then I can help other people find their own spirituality, which is really what my alternative life coaching work is doing. It's helping them explore the subjective nature of their reality, because we are bombarded by empirical data and the importance of objective empirical data from the scientific community, for everything from climate change to the way an aspirin works is designated on this scientific way of working, tablature of working, if you like. And so everything's got to fit onto this empirical fact, or else it isn't important. Whereas actually, the most important stuff for each individual is what's going on in their own individual, personal, unique world, which is the inner world. It's the subjective nature. It's the way we assimilate information from our surroundings. It's not the empirical facts that we share with everybody else. Those are important, but we are individual beings, a part of something much, much greater than ourselves, but it is our individual aspect and our individual reflection on what this bigger being is that is actually the crux of where the happiness lies, where the contentment lies.
One of the things I find that's very interesting is because you've indicated how your life had become kind of selfish at that particular point in time before you'd gone through this change. You were being pressured by the constraints of work, and what I found very interesting is your description of yourself. But I met you 30 odd years ago, 35 years ago, and at the time that I met you, it was the first time I'd been away from home. But I'd gone from a kind of a sort of Christian background. When I was at college in Northampton, before I came to Bournemouth, we were using the Bauhaus 1919 principles in the artwork. So we were exploring art and paintings and stuff. But then we were finding as youngsters, we were getting into the occult. We were looking at astral projection. We were looking at a whole load of things that were sort of interesting because of the juxtaposition between most of us coming from a kind of Christian background and seeing this other kind of world. And actually feeling that world within. Then I went to Bournemouth, and one of the things I found was that there was a lot of changes going on in my spiritual journey, and and again I was put into a position of need, or as in it looked as though I wouldn't be able to carry on studying at college. But it was only because of your interaction that I found that I could carry on. So again, so that person that you described as being selfish wasn't the person I met 30 years ago. So there's a kind of wave in the way our lives are experienced. So that there's a frequency in that you could almost see in the way, and you were probably brought back to that in your experiences in the house.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, but again, don't forget. I mean, it's. I remember very clearly the circumstance that you're describing there as when we were students. And the thing that I absolutely remember, and the reason that I was persuading you to try and find a solution to your problem of staying at Bournemouth then, was because it just to me, as somebody that had wanted to get away from home, go be a student, study filmmaking, it just seemed completely incomprehensible that anybody would succumb to circumstance that they found themselves in that would just wipe them away from that. So I was so adamant that you should sort yourself out, because it just was like, what are you doing? How can you possibly reject this? So I don't think it came from such an altruistic standpoint as perhaps you may feel, but I mean, everybody, no matter how selfish they are or how low they are, has got the basic human desire to help somebody else. Somewhere in everybody, it's there, even if it's hidden away completely and utterly, and buried in other stuff. The baggage that we all accumulate as we grow up, whether it be through our own fault or through, it doesn't matter who's to blame, and blame isn't really an issue anyway, it's just a circumstance. So when we get beyond the adolescent years and we grow and we're into our 20s, when we're starting to establish ourselves as adults, part of the issue of life then is to actually sort out the baggage that we've accumulated up to that point and realize that actually the choices that we're making subconsciously most of the time are not necessarily ones that are going to serve us for the rest of our days as a human being. And so, the only way to change that programming and that way of looking at life is to do it consciously. And that's where things like mindfulness and meditation really play a part, because they get in there and lever us out of the habitual thinking that we simply fall into, which is often thinking in terms of complete lack or of victimization or of whatever it may be. These negative emotional feelings. Now, don't forget also, of course, that society as a whole is actually geared to keeping us in that place. Now, whether that's a conspiracy theory or not, that's just the way it's working right now. And as you said earlier on, the technology is actually isolating us more and more as individuals, whereas the need for community is even greater now because we're getting this isolation. The balance to this isolation is to find our own inner stillness, our own inner power, and to understand who we are as individuals. Because then you can then take steps to move out into a more sociable environment if you wish to, if that's what is going to really help you and help others around you.
We have more on the way, so please subscribe to this channel and check out the link below if you'd consider becoming a patron to help us keep making more content. Thanks for watching.